I tell them, get to stepping.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm a word cell. What that means is I be tick typing all over the place. I be fucking yip yapping, and I just have an over concern of articulating my point in the most precise manner possible. Like, there are people out there that use phrases like, if you know, you know. And I love that shit. And I wish I could be just like that. Just say, if you know, you know, and leave it at that. But at the same time, I have this pretension within me that requires me to just fucking go in and say it the most verbose way possible. Brevity is the soul of wit, and I'm a fucking nitwit because of I cannot be brief about anything. And do you want to know how fucking much I struggle with it? What I'm starting with and what I'm talking about in this moment has absolutely fucking nothing to do with the topic of today. That's how much of a word cell I am. I be saying words. But there is a massive benefit to living the life of a word cell. It allows you to get very similar words and distinguish them. And just through the act of distinguishing them, you can understand something about how the mind works. Why were these words distinguished from each other? Why did we give them like these separate definitions? And why do we in society use them just a little bit differently from each other? When you are aware of a word, it immediately enlightens you of the existence of something or a distinction between two things. So what comes to my mind is awareness, knowledge, and understanding. Me personally, if I were to categorize them, I would say that understanding is the highest level of knowledge and awareness is a lesser form of knowledge. Awareness is just, you vaguely heard about it, you know of it, but you don't know it. And understanding is you have a detailed knowledge of this thing. So, for example, let's say the Eiffel Tower. I know of the Eiffel Tower. I don't even know what country it's in. I don't know what city it's in. That's being aware of the Eiffel Tower. You've heard it, you've seen pictures of it, you don't know where it is, you don't know how old it is, and that is the limits of your understanding of the fucking Eiffel Tower. Knowing is knowing it's in Paris, knowing when it was built, around the decade it was built. Understanding is knowing who built it, what the motivation for building it was, and all of the trivia to the point where you could be a tour guide for the Eiffel Tower. That's understanding. To master anything, you cannot possibly hope to master it without understanding it. You cannot. It's physically impossible to master anything, to be the best you can be, or to be so good that you have complete control over that field without understanding it. You just can't. And you will always be a slave to yourself unless you understand yourself. But there are a lot of people who don't even have self-awareness, let alone self-understanding. And when you don't have self-awareness, it's dangerous. It's so fucking dangerous. Not for yourself, not just for yourself, rather, but for everyone around you. If you don't have self-awareness, you are a hazard to everyone around you. Say there's a woman and she just has an issue with men. And she has an issue with men because of every single relationship she's had has been very, very toxic. Now, let's not account for how she might contribute to that within the dynamics of the relationship. We're literally here with the assumption that these partners that she has paired up with have just genuinely been terrible people that would have abused her regardless of her character. Let's say that's the case. She has now got a chip on her shoulder about men, and she will basically, in media, in society, in her social circles, see things that aren't there and jump to conclusions that are essentially very harmful, potentially, or just very, in the best case scenario, just false and misinformed. But when it gets dangerous, is this person can go out and they can be completely lacking self-awareness, but be educated enough to be able to go out there and formulate decent enough arguments that are ultimately false, as convincing as they are as arguments, just false. And they can convince people to basically adopt behavior that is harmful for their life, that's going to make their life worse. And this is what you see all the time. This person can lack self-awareness to such a degree that they don't understand why they keep finding themselves paired up with men that abuse them, basically. They don't understand why it's happening. They can speculate, but they don't understand themselves. So they'll never know for certain, and they'll never really know whether they're hot or cold about their speculations. How do you achieve self-awareness? Well, first of all, you need to understand your input into things. Do you know what I mean? It's just exactly what I was saying with words. Just by knowing a word exists and knowing its definition, you can see an effect of something. So just by knowing what your role in things are historically, you can understand yourself a little bit better. You can basically see not the foundation, because the foundation implies this is the essential nature of you. It's like the silhouette. It's the best I can say. It's the silhouette of you. It's the vague shape of you. And from there, you can reach deeper understanding of yourself through contemplating your actions. Why did you do X, Y, Z? Because of before we ever have the ability to think critically, we act. We're acting way before we start thinking. So it is very possible to act without a thought. And as soon as you're able to think critically, and most people don't really get told this growing up, and that's why people mature so late in life. But by sitting a child down and trying to make them understand why they did what they did, even if you yourself don't, it's about sitting them down and having a conversation and making them think about what they did until they understand why they did it. And that is very difficult the earlier in development a child is, but it's something you need to do. And if it's something that you didn't grow up doing, it's something you need to start doing as soon as possible. Tattoo it on your arm as a reminder. Just start doing it. If you're doing something and you don't think about why, it's slowing down reaching self-understanding. And there are people that are in their 60s, 70s that I've talked to that have zero self-awareness, let alone understanding. It's really quite sad. But that's pretty much the sign of the times. It's been like that for fucking hell, for a long time. Like, we have so much media out there to distract us. Like, don't get me wrong, I've done it all. I've watched TV. I've watched fucking movies. I've played video games. I've done it all. I've sat and read books. I've done it all. I've consumed all forms of media. And honestly, for me, music. I will listen to music so many hours in a day. And it's not even about listening to new music. It's listening to the same fucking tunes daily. And when I do that, I'm not able to think quite as clearly because the music essentially curates my thoughts. It does. I'm the type of fucking pathetic loser that sits and just thinks about, oh man, imagine if I was in the band. It's a complete waste of fucking mental processing power. But that's my vice. There are people that will sit and play video games for extended periods of time, and then as soon as they're done, they'll find their next vice. It's important to really just unplug and sit and think for a while about yourself, what you do. And once you start to develop an understanding of yourself, you can master yourself. And what happens when you master yourself? You have complete control over yourself. You have self-control. When you have self-control, you can develop discipline, you can develop habits, and you can start making it so you can literally be whoever the fuck you want to be, as long as you're not black. If you're black, there are limited things you can be in life. You can be an entertainer, and even then, it's not really in your hands whether you can make a living off of that. You can be an athlete. I think you've got a bit more control in terms of being an athlete, but the demand for athletes is a lot smaller than the demand for an entertainer. So, which one is harder? You can go to jail, I suppose. Damn, it's tough, I suppose. It's tough, isn't it? What are we gonna do? Having self-control, the reason it can literally take you anywhere you can imagine is because you have an astonishing potential that you can't even begin to reach until you have control over yourself. It's a slow climb towards self-improvement, becoming better in any sort of direction you want. And the people that are capable of being whatever they want are just so developed in every single area you can think of, intellectually, emotionally, socially, spiritually. They are so fucking developed in all of these areas, and it is totally possible because you don't need to be a specialist in one specific hyper niche subject. You don't need to do that. You can get by professionally and make quite a lot of money just by being an all-rounder. And say shit like project management and fucking general managers in like corporations. I mean, it's a fucking soulless job, but these are not specialists. They're generalists, and they're making bank for doing an insanely easy job. They're making bankrolls for doing a very, very easy job, managing specialists that are getting paid much, much less than them. The only way they get that is by being smart enough, social enough, and emotionally mature enough. It's the only way you can achieve that job, because of you will break under the pressure if you're not emotionally stable enough. You will fail at your job time and time again if you're not socially capable enough. And if you're a dumbass, then you just have no utility whatsoever. There's no chance of you being of any use in that role. It's already a pretty fucking tenuous position when it comes to the utility it provides. But if you're a dumbass, there's no chance that you're actually making like the environment better or contributing much. So you have to understand that, yeah, being an expert in a niche subject, but that is not the be all end all. Once you achieve that, or once you approach that, you need to start developing in other areas as well. And the only way to be able to do that is by getting a hold of yourself, having self-control, having discipline, setting habits that literally just by living the way you live makes you better day by day. It's like having a habit of eating healthy. There are people out there that don't even think about it. There are people out there that don't have to push themselves to go to the gym. There are people out there, just by virtue of making it through the week, will go out and socialize at the end. It's pretty much, that's what it is to develop healthy habits. When you develop healthy habits, you develop without it feeling like homework, without it feeling like studying. It just happens. Like for me, I'm not a super balanced person, but I feel like I'm decently adjusted socially. I am emotionally mature, but where I excel, I think, is that intellectual pursuits, for me, doesn't feel like studying. Now, studying for me is studying languages. Because of studying a language, I have to be like motivated. I have to be motivated to sit down and do it. I have to get enjoyment out of doing it. But I can sit and study something that is so fucking boring for me in that moment, and yet it doesn't actually feel like I'm doing a chore. It doesn't feel like I'm getting up and doing the washing up. It's like that's existence for me. It's sometimes I'll have to read large quantities of information to take it in. That is just kind of like an everyday occurrence for me. So, summary, because of I've been talking for way longer than I intended. First, you have to have self-awareness. And to get self-awareness, you must scrutinize your actions so that you can get to the essential core of what you are. By knowing yourself, by reaching an understanding of yourself, you can gain a mastery of who you are. Without any awareness, you are dangerous to yourself and the people around you. With self-understanding, you have complete control over yourself and have the ability to develop yourself to such an extent that you can be anything that you want in life because you will have the skills available. Unless you're black, of course.